There is something unsettling about the way we build our homes today, something that doesn't sit right. In the heart of winter, when the sky is silent and breath turns to frost, the truth reveals itself. In 1986, deep in the cold silence of Wisconsin, researchers stepped inside a forgotten cabin built in 1847. The outside temperature had plunged to a brutal 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside, a quiet, steady warmth of 68 degrees, sustained by nothing more than a modest fire gently flickering in the hearth. There was no insulation, no plastic wrap, no thermostat, no humming machine pushing air through metal veins. Just wood, joined by hand, settled by time, and still holding heat like an embrace. Now picture a modern home, sealed with foam, lined with fiberglass, warmed by a $20,000 furnace. And yet, the moment power fails, the illusion collapses. Within hours, warmth fades, pipes burst, and families curl into blankets, as if nature is reclaiming its hold. How is it possible that what we call progress leaves us so exposed? What ancient understanding did we abandon? What quiet wisdom of builders past now lies buried beneath convenience and code? Tonight, we explore not just a house, but a sanctuary, a structure that breathes with the earth and guards warmth like memory. And the story we uncover may change how you view shelter itself. But first, ask yourself, when your power goes out in a snowstorm, how long does it take for your home to turn cold? Not uncomfortable, but truly cold. Let us know in the comments below. You're not alone in wondering. Let's begin. The modern home whispers comfort, but hides fragility. When winter arrives, you feel it. That low, constant hum of forced air cycling on and off, like the anxious breath of a system just trying to keep up. Walk near a window and you'll notice a subtle shift, the chill that seeps in through glass. Lean against a wall and feel the temperature drop. The house is warm only because something is fighting to keep it that way. Modern construction, for all its polish, rests on a flawed belief that we can overcome nature with raw force. That warmth can be sustained not by harmony, but by domination, continuous energy input, always running, always burning. But what happens when that input stops? The data is sobering. The average modern home in North America loses about 1 degree Fahrenheit per hour during an outage, even when the temperature outside is only at freezing. When it drops to 10 degrees, the rate doubles. Within 12 hours, temperatures inside become dangerous. Within 24, unlivable. And all of this despite walls packed with modern insulation, windows labeled energy efficient, and HVAC systems designed to regulate. So what's missing? The answer is something older than electricity, something modern blueprints forgot to include: thermal mass. You see, most modern homes are built with lightweight materials: wooden studs, drywall, thin siding. These slow down the transfer of heat, yes, but they do not hold it. They do not store warmth the way stone, earth, or dense wood can. It's like wrapping yourself in a windbreaker during a blizzard. You'll block some air, but the moment your body stops producing heat, the cold rushes in. Compare that to a heavy wool coat warmed by fire. It doesn't just block cold, it radiates stored heat, even after you've stepped away from the flame. That's the ancient wisdom of thermal mass. Not insulation that resists heat, but materials that remember it, that soak up warmth slowly and release it slowly, like a sponge for energy. And then there's the matter of air, or more precisely, air infiltration. Despite our synthetic wraps and barriers, most new homes have what amounts to a 2-foot by 2-foot hole somewhere in their envelope. Air leaks out, warmth escapes, the system fights to replace what's lost, and never quite wins. It's not just inefficiency, it's unsustainability. Now travel back, across time, across oceans, to the snow-wrapped forests of Scandinavia and the windswept plains of northern Russia. There, log cabins built by hand centuries ago still stand. Their thick wooden walls and tightly joined corners hold warmth like sacred vessels. During blizzards that last for days, when the outside world plunges to 40 degrees, these structures maintain interior temperatures of 50 to 60 degrees, sometimes more, with no furnace, no electricity, just one fire a day, and sometimes no fire at all. They stay above freezing for 72 hours or longer, not by accident, not by chance, but because they were designed that way. Through patience, through purpose, through a knowledge of physics that modern codes barely acknowledge. It isn't magic, it's method, and it's time we remembered. If you find value in these forgotten ways, if this sparks something in you, something ancient, consider liking this video and subscribing. Not for us, but so that this knowledge, this wisdom, might reach those who need it before it's too late. To understand the warmth of a medieval cabin, we must return to the forest, not just as a source of wood, but as a living library of material knowledge. Every beam, every wall begins with a decision, and that decision begins with a tree. The builders of the old world did not choose timber by chance. They didn't walk into a forest and grab the nearest straight trunk. No, their choices were deliberate, even sacred. In the deep north, Scandinavia, Russia, Finland, they sought out old-growth pine and spruce, trees that had endured centuries of wind and winter, growing slowly in the harshest cold. Why slow growth? Because these trees, forged by adversity, grow dense. When modern scientists examine their timber under microscopes, they see something extraordinary. Growth rings so tight you can barely count them. In some samples, more than 100 rings in a single inch, layer upon layer of compressed time. Modern lumber, in contrast, is bred for speed. Trees are harvested young with only 10 to 20 rings per inch. They're lighter, cheaper, faster to process, but emptier, less dense, less massive. And in this story, mass matters. More mass per cubic foot means more capacity to hold heat. A 12-inch log cut from a centuries-old pine weighs over 60 pounds per linear foot. The same size log from modern timber weighs closer to 35. That difference isn't just weight, it's memory. It's the ability to store fire's warmth long after the flame dies. But even the densest log is useless if air seeps between them. Warmth does not stand a chance against drafts. That's where the genius of old builders shines, not in what they built with, but how they joined it. Each log in a traditional Nordic cabin is shaped individually, not cut to a standard size, not forced into place, but carefully scribed by hand to fit perfectly with the one below it. It's called scribe-fit joinery, and it's not fast. A single wall might take weeks. But when done properly, the result is a structure so airtight that modern testing struggles to believe it. Researchers studying 18th century Norwegian cabins found something astonishing. Less air leakage than in modern homes built to the strictest energy codes. No foam, no plastic, just wood, fit with reverence. The secret lies in compression. These joints, known in some places as shrink-to-fit notches, aren't static. They evolve. As logs dry and settle, their own weight presses them tighter. What begins with small gaps becomes a seamless seal. The cabin gets stronger with age, not weaker. Between these logs, a forgotten triad of materials finishes the seal: sphagnum moss, clay, and animal hair. Each plays a role, not decorative, not optional, but essential. Sphagnum moss, in particular, is a marvel. Collected from forest wetlands, it's dried and packed into the joints. But here's what makes it special. Sphagnum doesn't truly die. Its cell structure, even when dry, remains intact. It's springy, it breathes, it moves with the wood, flexing gently as the cabin shifts with seasons. Every tiny leaf holds the memory of water, and when dried, holds air instead. Thousands of microscopic pockets, trapping heat like nature's own insulation. Its R value, a modern term for resistance to heat transfer, approaches that of fiberglass. But sphagnum does more. Its high acidity, a pH near 4, makes it hostile to bacteria and fungi. Insects avoid it. It doesn't rot, it protects. The clay, layered over the moss, hardens to form a near-airtight seal. And the animal hair? It's the fiber, the tension, the binding force, just like rebar in concrete. Together, these three create a living wall, a seal that moves, breathes, defends, and lasts. And the logs themselves? Often 10, 12, even 16 inches in diameter. Walls so thick that heat doesn't just stay in, it lingers. This is called thermal lag, the time it takes for heat to move through a material. In a dense log wall, that lag can be 12 to 24 hours. So when the sun warms your cabin by day, or a fire crackles in the stove, that warmth doesn't vanish when the flame dies. It sinks into the walls. And hours later, as the outside world turns cold and dark, that same warmth flows gently back inward, radiant, silent, constant. The cabin becomes a wheel of heat, a slow-turning flywheel that gathers energy and releases it with care. Modern engineers didn't discover this. They only confirmed it. In a study by the National Bureau of Standards in the 1980s, 2 cabins were tested, one with 7-inch log walls rated at R10 and one framed in standard construction with R12 fiberglass insulation. On paper, the modern wall seemed better. But when spring came and temperatures fluctuated, the truth emerged. The log cabin used 46% less energy. Why? Because thermal mass buffers change. It smooths the peaks and valleys of heat. It makes a home stable. It makes it resilient. We forgot this, but the trees, they didn't. In the heart of every ancient cabin stood something more than a stove. It wasn't a decoration, and it wasn't just a place to cook. It was the soul of the home. Heavy, silent, warm. A structure of stone that didn't just generate heat. It remembered it, it shared it, and it never rushed. We call it now the masonry heater. But centuries ago, across lands blanketed in snow and shadow, it had many names. In Russia, it was the pichka, a word spoken with respect. In Scandinavia, the kakelong. In Germany, the kacheloven, the tile stove wrapped in ceramic skin. These were not fireplaces. In fact, to call them that is to misunderstand them entirely. The fireplace, for all its flickering charm, is a thief. It pulls heat from the room into the chimney, swallowing warm air and throwing it skyward. You sit beside it, but the warmth slips past you, lost to the stars. The masonry heater is different. It doesn't chase fire. It contains it. It tames it. It listens to the laws of heat and follows them patiently. Picture this: a structure made not of metal, but of stone or brick, heavy, dense, layered with a kind of ancient intelligence. You light a single fire, hot and fast. Thin sticks of dry pine catch quickly. Flames rise, dance, then fade. But instead of rushing out the flue, the heat travels inward, downward, sideways, through a maze of channels carved into the body of the heater. 10, 20 feet of winding brick corridors. The heat walks, not runs. And in doing so, it surrenders, slowly, to the masonry. By the time the smoke escapes from the chimney, it is no longer hot. The heat has been captured, stored, held inside the stone, waiting to be released, not all at once, but over hours, like a slow exhale. The effect? Remarkable. The surface of the heater remains warm all day, around 100 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit, just enough to warm your hand, your bones, your spirit. Never enough to burn. The warmth is gentle. It radiates outward evenly, silently. It fills a room without filling the air. It heats you directly, your skin, your clothes, your bed. This is radiant heat, a kind of warmth that bypasses air and speaks directly to your body. No hot ceiling, no cold floor, no drafts, just stillness. A proper masonry heater might weigh 2 tons. That's 4,000 pounds of thermal mass, a sleeping giant of heat. Some include baking ovens built into their sides where bread rises slowly next to brick warmed by yesterday's fire. Others hide benches beneath stone, where a tired traveler can rest against stored sunlight. And in the harshest winters, children fall asleep with their backs against the warm wall, dreaming as the stone hums quietly behind them. In some traditions, the heater became the center of everything, not just physically, but socially. Meals were cooked beside it, clothes were dried on it, boots rested near its base. Even smoking meats in the attic was planned around its slow, reliable pulse. Modern engineers might marvel at the design, but old builders didn't need blueprints. They watched nature. They trusted memory. One of them was Mark Twain, who traveled through Russia in the 1800s. He wrote in quiet amazement of a household that lit a fire for just 10 minutes each morning. Thin sticks of pine, no logs, no roaring blaze. The fire was locked in, and the stove, always safe to touch, kept the room warm until midnight. 10 minutes of fire for 14 hours of comfort. And all of this without electricity, without a fan, without sensors or systems. Just heat, captured and released like a prayer. In Finland, researchers reconstructed one of these cabins and put it to the test. A single firing, just 2 hours, around 30 pounds of wood, was enough to maintain an interior temperature of 65 degrees Fahrenheit for over 18 hours. Outside, a biting 40 Fahrenheit. Inside, peace. They found something else too. Total fuel use dropped by more than half compared to modern heating systems. Not just efficient, resilient. Because if you forget to fire the stove for a day or two, the home doesn't collapse into cold. It holds. The mass guards the warmth, and when the fire returns, it doesn't start over. It continues. Now imagine that structure inside a small room with low ceilings and thick walls. Every surface near you is warm, not hot, just comforting, like a deep breath that never leaves. And now remember this. Radiant heat works best in small enclosed spaces. This is why ancient cabins didn't sprawl. Their rooms were compact. Ceilings rarely exceeded 7 feet. Everything was close. Everything was intimate. There was no wasted volume. Warmth stayed near the people, not the rafters. Modern homes chase openness, high ceilings, great rooms, wide glass. But in the world of survival, of true warmth, compactness is kindness. The ancient stove, the log walls, the tight joints, they all work together. Not as separate pieces, but as a single system. A body of architecture with a heartbeat made of fire and stone. And while today's homes need furnaces running constantly just to stay stable, these cabins, older than memory, stayed warm with one fire a day. That is not a trick. That is a truth, one we used to understand. The warmth of the ancient cabin was never the result of a single trick. It wasn't just the heavy logs, or the scribe-fit joints, or the masonry heater. It was all of it. A complete system, where every part, every material, every choice served a purpose. The cabin didn't resist the cold. It understood it. It didn't try to block nature. It worked with it. It listened and it responded. To understand how these cabins worked, you must stop thinking in fragments. You must stop looking for isolated solutions. Because this was not just a house. It was a system of survival, tested across generations, shaped by silence and frost. It began at the ground. Instead of laying the floor flat on frozen earth, ancient builders raised it. Stone piers lifted the cabin above the ground, breaking the link between floor and soil. This gap, small but vital, meant the cold couldn't seep upward like a slow tide. Below the floorboards, moss or sawdust was packed to insulate. Above it, thick planks, sometimes double-layered, formed the first layer of warmth. Then came the walls, not hollow frames with batting stuffed between studs, but solid mass. Logs, 10, 12, even 16 inches thick, locked together by hand, one on top of the other. The scribe-fit joinery sealed them tight. The moss, clay, and hair filled the tiny cracks with material that bent and breathed with the seasons. No air leaked in, no heat escaped by accident. The entire envelope of the home was not just a boundary, it was a battery. Inside, the rooms were small, not cramped, just deliberate. No grand foyers, no vaulted ceilings, no empty volume for heat to disappear into. Every cubic foot served a human purpose, to hold warmth close. Ceilings were low, often just 7 feet, not because they couldn't build higher, but because they chose not to. Heat rises, and so they shaped the room to keep the warmth near. At the center of it all stood the masonry heater, not as an afterthought, but as the heart of the home. It wasn't just placed in the middle for efficiency. It was a spiritual anchor, a place where light, heat, food, and conversation all converged. The stove's radiant heat spread outward, through stone, through air, through memory. Walls near it warmed first. Rooms closest to the core stayed hottest. Farther rooms, cooler. And this was intentional. They called it thermal zoning, a quiet ancient wisdom. In the modern world, we aim to keep every room exactly the same temperature. We push warmth into places we barely use. We heat storage rooms, unused guest bedrooms, garages. And in doing so, we multiply our energy demand, endlessly. But in a medieval cabin, warmth followed need. The living area where people cooked, ate, and worked was kept around 65 degrees Celsius. The sleeping space, where thick blankets wrapped the body, could fall to 55 degrees or even lower. Storage areas, colder still. And this wasn't a flaw. It was a strategy. A recognition that the human body doesn't need uniform conditions. It needs intelligent ones. Even the chimney, the final escape route for heat, was used with intention. Before the smoke left the house, it passed through upper levels. Along the way, it warmed lofts. Sometimes the attic chamber was used to dry herbs or smoke fish. Waste heat wasn't wasted. Nothing was. Near the stove, builders carved out small hollows, spaces called zapecha or podpecha. In these warm niches, boots were placed to dry. Blankets were stored. Clothing stayed toasty through the night. The home held its people, not just structurally, but emotionally. And all of this worked without motors, without sensors, without apps. A child could learn to run the system in a day. The stove needed cleaning once or twice a year. The moss needed inspecting every few seasons. There were no filters to replace, no fan belts to fail, no system reset buttons. The home did not need power. The home was power. And over time it got better. As the years passed, the logs dried fully. They settled. They sealed tighter. The masonry heater, used daily, developed micro cracks in its core, tiny hairlines that actually improved heat distribution. The more the home aged, the stronger it became. Imagine that, a home that improves with time. This is the inverse of modern construction, where deterioration begins the day you move in, where warranties tick down, where efficiency fades, where every system eventually breaks and asks you to buy a new one. But these old cabins were built for lifetimes and more, not because their builders had magic, but because they had memory. They built what worked, not just for one winter, but for 50, not just for one family, but for generations. In the end, the warmth wasn't just a product of fire, it was the result of understanding the body, the forest, the sky, the stone, and building something that honored all of it. That is the ancient system, not a single invention, but a symphony. If the ancient cabin is so wise, so warm, so resilient, why did we walk away? Why did we turn our backs on something that worked so well, something that held warmth through the cold, through blackouts, through war and winter? The answer is not sinister. It is, in a way, sorrowful, a slow forgetting, a drift, like a people leaving behind a sacred song because they no longer remember how to sing it. It began with speed. In the 1800s, as settlers spread across North America, there was a hunger to build fast. Entire towns had to rise within weeks. The art of scribe-fit joinery, a skill that could take years to master, simply didn't fit the schedule. Instead of crafting each log to fit its neighbor like a puzzle, builders began cutting lumber at mills, stacking 2x4s and framing homes in days. Stick framing became the new standard, not because it was better, but because it was faster. Then came fuel. Coal, oil, natural gas. Suddenly, heat was cheap. A poorly insulated house was no longer a problem. If the wind blew through the walls, you simply turned up the thermostat. If the air escaped through the attic, you burned more fuel. Comfort could be purchased, monthly, endlessly, like a subscription to warmth. And so, slowly, we lost the incentive to build for efficiency. Why would we? The furnace would fix it. The gas line would save us. During the post-World War II boom, millions of homes were needed. Builders streamlined everything, standardized it, optimized it, not for performance, but for cost. The goal was not to build homes that lasted 100 years, but homes that could be sold now, quickly, profitably. Thermal mass? Too expensive. Scribe-fit log walls? Too slow. Masonry heaters? Too heavy, too rare, too hard to teach. Instead, we built hollow walls and filled them with fluff. We wrapped homes in plastic. We relied on furnaces with blowers and ducts and motors and sensors, machines that would fail and be replaced, systems that would wear out, homes that would depend on the grid, not survive without it. And slowly, we forgot what it was like to live in a home that held warmth, not just generated it. The numbers tell the story. A modern home in a cold climate burns around 90 million BTUs of energy every year just to stay comfortable. The old log cabin? Maybe 15 million. And yet, it often feels warmer, more even, more human. How did we convince ourselves that the fragile system was the better one? It's not just energy costs, it's lifetime cost. The modern home needs a furnace replacement every 15 years. Ducts must be cleaned, filters changed, parts fail, thermostats glitch. The home is full of systems that ask for attention, constantly. But the medieval cabin? Once built, it settles. It waits. Its systems age not into failure, but into strength. Yes, the upfront cost is higher, but the decades tell a different tale. A stick frame home might spend $3,000 to $5,000 per year on heating. Over 30 years, that's up to $150,000 spent on keeping cold out. And still, when the power fails, the home turns cold in hours. But in the old cabin, you don't fear the storm. You welcome it. You light your fire, you sit by the stone, and the house holds the heat with you. The sad truth? The world stopped teaching these ways. You won't learn scribe-fit joinery in trade school. You won't find masonry heater builders in every city. The knowledge now rests in the hands of a few. Aging craftsmen, rural builders, families who learned from fathers and grandmothers. When they go, what remains? In parts of Scandinavia, rural Russia, and the Alaskan wilderness, this knowledge still lives. People still build this way, still warm their homes with one fire, still wake in warmth when the snow is 2 feet deep. They are not holding on to nostalgia. They are holding on to function. They burn a fraction of the fuel. They fix less. They spend less. They live more securely. They survive the blackout, the blizzard, the deep dark of January. And they do it by remembering. We, the modern world, didn't mean to forget. We were simply in a hurry. We reached for convenience, and in doing so, we lost touch with something that had already been solved. We replaced resilience with dependence. We traded wisdom for efficiency. We swapped longevity for sales. And what we got was fragility. But the knowledge is not gone, not yet. And it only takes a whisper, a spark, a rediscovery to bring it back. We've explored the wisdom. We've felt the warmth in our minds. But does it actually work? Not in theory, not in memory, but in practice. The answer is yes, and not just anecdotally, not from stories passed down beside firelight, but from science, quiet, controlled, measurable proof, collected in some of the coldest places on Earth. In 2004, in the heart of winter, a team of researchers in Fairbanks, Alaska, where temperatures routinely plunge to 40-degree Fahrenheit, set out to test a question. Could a traditional log cabin truly outperform a modern home? They built 2 cabins, side by side, same size, same orientation, same location, but with one key difference. Cabin 1 was built the modern way. Stick framing, 206 studs, R19 fiberglass insulation, vapor barriers, drywall, propane furnace. Cabin 2, built the old way, 10-inch thick solid logs, scribe-fit joinery, a masonry heater at its center. Then they turned on the heat. For the modern home, warmth meant constancy. The propane furnace had to run constantly to hold the temperature. Every day, it burned 18 pounds of fuel. A steady feed, a delicate balance. But the log cabin? They lit a fire just twice a day. 35 pounds of wood, that's all. And then, silence. No hum, no fans, no pumps. Just slow, radiant warmth. The masonry heater absorbed the flame, and then it released it, hour by hour, across the day. Temperatures inside? Before morning fire, 62 degrees. After fire, 72 degrees. Even through the deepest nights, the inside held steady, never dropping to danger, always livable, always safe. Then the ultimate test. They cut the heat. First, in the modern cabin, they turned off the propane, simulating a power outage, the kind that happens during storms, deep freezes, or disasters. And within 8 hours, the temperature inside dropped to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. By 24 hours, the cabin matched the outside. Freezing, lifeless, uninhabitable. Then they cut the fire in the log cabin and waited. 1 day passed, then 2, then 3. 3 days without heat. And the interior temperature? Still above 48 degrees. No freezing, no frost. Just lingering warmth, the last breath of stone still exhaling. And the people inside? They felt it. They rated their comfort higher than those in the modern cabin, even when the thermometer said otherwise. Because radiant heat isn't just a number. It's a feeling. It wraps around you. It touches your skin. It tells your body, quietly, you are safe. The researchers weren't the only ones to ask this question. In Norway, the Institute of Wood Technology examined historic log homes, some over 200 years old, and they found the same truth repeated. Lower heating costs, more stable interior temperatures, fewer repairs, longer lifespan, greater comfort. They used thermal imaging on cold nights, the kind where modern homes glow orange on the screen, leaking warmth like water through a cracked pot. Windows, doors, outlets, all glowing with loss. But the log homes? Dark, still, sealed. The warmth stayed inside, as if the building had remembered its role. Modern building codes measure R value, a number that tells you how well a material resists heat loss in perfect conditions. But R value doesn't measure time. It doesn't measure mass. It doesn't measure how long something stays warm after the fire has died. A wall with R10? Not enough, they say. But in the real world, in a storm, in silence with no power, that same wall outperforms R40 modern construction. Why? Because the modern code ignores thermal memory. And memory matters. Some states have started to recognize this. Exemptions exist for log homes in energy compliance law, because the data is now impossible to ignore. But most of the world is still building for short-term comfort, for cosmetic appeal, for initial sale price. They have not yet remembered what the old builders knew by heart. This isn't opinion, it's not folk wisdom, it's not aesthetic. It's physics. Warmth held in mass, air sealed by joinery, heat radiated gently by stone, moisture controlled by breathing walls, and systems that work without needing the grid. It's real, it's tested, and it's still here, just waiting to be used again. So what have we learned? Why does a home built with axes and moss, by hands rough from bark and firewood, stay warm, while a home built with machines, foam, wires, and thermostats begins to freeze within hours? The answer isn't one thing. It's not just the log walls, not just the moss, not just the stove. It is everything, working together. A system, elegant in its silence, rooted not in technology, but in truth. Physics, not fantasy. Old-growth timber, heavy and slow to burn, rich in density and memory. Scribe-fit joinery, cut by eye, sealed by time. Sphagnum moss, acidic and springy, flexing with the seasons, guarding against rot and insect. Clay and hair, binding like mortar, breathing like skin. Masonry heaters, warming not air, but people, quietly, evenly, deeply. Small rooms, shaped to hold heat where it matters most. Zoned warmth, acknowledging that the body needs different things in sleep than in waking. Nothing was wasted, nothing was accidental, every part purposeful. This wasn't innovation, it was observation. It was humility. It was knowing the cold, not fighting it blindly, but learning how to live beside it. How to hold it at the door, gently, without hatred. And yet, in our modern quest for convenience, we walked away from it. Not because it stopped working, but because we stopped listening. We built faster. We built cheaper. We burned oil, then gas, then electricity. We let go of patience. And we told ourselves this was progress. But what we gained in speed, we lost in wisdom. Today, the average home consumes 6 times the energy of that ancient cabin. 90 million BTUs every year, just to stay warm. And when the power goes out, it becomes a shell. Cold, silent, fragile. But the log cabin? It holds warmth for days. It doesn't panic. It remembers. And perhaps now, we are beginning to remember too. Because the question is no longer just, can we build this way again? The answer is yes. The real question is, will we? Will we choose to build not for sales, but for seasons? Not for efficiency ratings, but for resilience? Not for appearances, but for the quiet, radiant truth of physics done well? There are builders, quiet, persistent, still carrying this knowledge. In Alaska, in Finland, in Russia, in the northern woods of Canada. They know how to fit logs like fingers, how to carve channels in stone, how to light a fire once and feel its heat until morning. They are not clinging to nostalgia. They are living with certainty. And maybe, just maybe, the world is listening again. Because what these old homes show us is not just about architecture, it's about how we see the world. Do we force it to comply? Or do we work with it? Do we build for 20 years? Or for 200? Do we chase comfort at any cost? Or do we seek a comfort that lasts quietly even in the darkest cold? This is not a return to the past. It is a step toward something better, something rooted, grounded, tested. Because the truth is simple. To stay warm in the dead of winter, you don't need technology. You need understanding. You need patience. You need a home that works with the sky, the stone, the fire, and the wood. You need materials that remember. You need heat that lingers. You need design that listens. That wisdom still exists. It has not vanished. It is here, in the logs, in the moss, in the stone, and perhaps now, in you.